At the edge of the known solar system, beyond the warmth of the sun, lies a world most of us have forgotten. A frozen shadow, drifting silently in the abyss. We call it Pluto, yet Pluto is not what it seems. The faint sunlight that reaches this distant sphere is little more than a dying ember. Its surface lies buried beneath mountains of ice, its skies cloaked in eternal twilight. To the human eye, it is a barren wasteland, but to those who dare to look deeper, Pluto becomes something far more unsettling, a silent sentinel guarding the threshold between light and the endless dark. Ancient myths whispered of a realm of the dead that lay beneath the earth. But perhaps those stories were not metaphors. Perhaps they were echoes, memories of a place far removed from our fragile world. Pluto may not simply be a planet laced with ice and stone, but rather a tomb, a gate, a reminder that at the farthest reaches of our solar system, something waits. And the question is not what Pluto is, but what it hides. Imagine a place where the sun is nothing more than a pale star, weaker than the brightest lamp in your home. A place where noon looks like twilight, and twilight feels like the eternal night of the grave. That place is Pluto. Here, light is so faint that shadows seem alive, stretching and twisting in unnatural silence. The temperature is so cruel that metal becomes brittle, air itself freezes, and the concept of warmth is nothing but a memory. The world is not dead because it never truly lived. Pluto is not like Mars, scarred by winds and dust storms, nor like Europa, where oceans whisper beneath layers of ice. Pluto is different. It is a silence given form, a silence that weighs upon the mind as if the planet itself rejects the very notion of life. The mountains rise jagged and dark, taller than the Himalayas, carved not by rivers or winds, but by something older, something colder. The plains stretch out endlessly, like frozen seas, unbroken and merciless. Every inch of its surface whispers of solitude, an emptiness untouched for billions of years. Yet within that emptiness lies a question that unsettles even the bravest astronomers. Why does Pluto feel less like a rock drifting in space, and more like a sentinel standing guard at the edge of everything we know? At first glance, Pluto's surface seems nothing more than ice and stone, but the longer one stares, the less natural it appears. The mountains do not resemble mountains. The shadows do not resemble shadows. Something about Pluto feels constructed. Gigantic ridges stretch for hundreds of miles, rising like jagged teeth from the frozen plains. Their shapes are too precise, too deliberate, as though they were not carved by time or erosion, but set in place by a will, an intelligence, older than the solar system itself. Some peaks bend at impossible angles, spiraling toward the sky like claws reaching for a vanished sun. Astronomers, peering through the grainy images from New Horizons, have noticed structures that defy reason. Monoliths, dark and smooth, standing upright amidst the ice. Perfectly symmetrical patterns carved into the landscape, so vast that they can only be seen from orbit. To dismiss them as natural formations is comforting, but perhaps dangerous. What if these are not mountains, but the fossilized remains of titanic beings, long dead yet frozen in silent agony? What if the plains are not seas of ice, but burial grounds stretching across the entire planet? Every image returned from Pluto raises more questions than answers. The planet does not look lifeless, it looks haunted, and the unease grows sharper with every detail revealed. Perhaps Pluto was never a planet in the conventional sense. Perhaps it is a mausoleum, built not for mortals, but for gods. And if that is true, then we must ask, who or what placed these ruins at the edge of the sun's reach? And why do they remain untouched, as though waiting for someone or something to return? Silence is not always empty. Sometimes silence hides a sound too deep for the human ear to understand. For decades, Pluto was thought to be nothing more than ice and rock. But as the New Horizons probe swept past its frozen plains, strange anomalies whispered through the data. Faint vibrations, irregular pulses, signals that did not belong to a dead world. Some scientists dismissed them as interference. Others, however, noticed patterns, rhythms too precise to be random. Beneath Pluto's crust, beneath its seas of nitrogen ice, something seemed to stir, like a heartbeat buried under miles of frozen stone, slow, relentless, patient. Imagine standing on Pluto's desolate surface. Around you, a wasteland of shadow and frost. But in the silence, you feel it, an almost imperceptible hum beneath your feet, pulsing through the ground. Not mechanical, not geological, something older, as though the planet itself is breathing. Legends speak of gods who sleep beneath mountains, awaiting the day they awaken. If those legends are true, Pluto may not be a world at all, but a sarcophagus. The vibrations are not echoes of the planet, but the dreams of what lies entombed within. And the question that chills the blood is this: what happens when the dream ends? Every frontier has a final gate, a boundary beyond which lies the unknown. For our solar system, that gate may well be Pluto. To the human mind, Pluto appears small, insignificant, a frozen remnant of cosmic debris, but myths and whispers suggest otherwise. Ancient Sumerian tablets, long eroded by time, spoke of a dark threshold beyond the seventh heaven, a realm where exiled gods lingered in eternal silence. Could Pluto be that threshold? The probe New Horizons captured fleeting images of shadows across Pluto's surface, shadows that did not belong to mountains or valleys. Some analysts claim the shapes resembled colossal figures standing motionless against the ice. NASA released only fragments of these images. The rest, according to conspiracy, was sealed away. If Pluto is not merely a planet, but a marker, then it stands as the final warning before we step into the true abyss. Beyond its orbit stretches the Kuiper Belt, and beyond that, the great dark sea of interstellar space. What if Pluto is not guarding us from the void, but guarding the void from us? It is a chilling thought that humanity, in its hunger for discovery, might awaken forces best left undisturbed, forces that linger in the black between stars, watching, waiting. Pluto may not be the end of the solar system. It may be the beginning of something far worse. Pluto is not a world. It is a silence given form, a reminder carved in ice that some truths are not meant to be uncovered. For centuries, humanity has looked to the stars with wonder, believing that knowledge is salvation. But what if discovery is a curse? What if every step outward brings us closer not to enlightenment, but to something vast, ancient, and indifferent to our existence? Pluto waits at the edge of the sun's fading light. Its frozen surface hides secrets too heavy for human minds. Its shadows stretch longer than eternity. To call it a planet is to underestimate it. To call it a tomb may be closer to the truth. Perhaps it is a warning. Perhaps it is a lock. Perhaps it is both. But one thing is certain. Pluto does not merely exist. It watches. And in its silence lies a question that may haunt us forever. When the ice finally breaks, what will rise to greet us?